Howdy Beans, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Howdy Beans podcast. I'm your host, Luke the Elder Bean. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're all good, as per usual. Today, we're going to be looking at the underrated, underappreciated, and downright done dirty movie that is John Carter 2012. I absolutely love and adore this film, and I've been wanting to talk about it for a long time, so I thought we're getting close to the end of the year. It's very, very close to Christmas. So while I've got the free time, I'm going to slot it in near to the end of the year and just talk about a movie that I feel like should be talked about more, a movie that I love to bits, and a film that I just really want to watch, to be honest. Now we're close to the end of the year. So that's what we're going to be talking about, John Carter. But before we get into all of that and more, I just want to do a bit of housekeeping because I like to keep my house nice and clean, especially when I travel to Mars. How it's quite dusty and there's dust everywhere, and I need to have a bit of a spring clean ready for the new year. So in order to do that, make sure that you follow me on Twitter, howdybeans_pod. If you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And finally, if you listen to this on Spotify on your mobile phone, don't forget to leave a rating as well as follow me on Spotify. Also, you can leave comments now down below on Spotify, so make sure you leave a comment down below. And so as I mentioned, we're looking at John Carter from 2012. Like I said, I absolutely love and adore this movie, and it absolutely bothers me that this movie flopped. And the reason this movie flopped, and it's public knowledge, like everybody who is a movie fan knows this bit of lore, this story. But the reason it flopped is because of Disney. This movie is actually classed as one of the most worst marketed movie of all time, because it was like it changed its name. I think they actually changed the name during the premiere. If I remember correctly, when the premiere was happening, it was still called John Carter of Mars, which is a way better name instead of just John Carter. They even have merchandise and all that had John Carter Mars on it, and the posters were different. And then just before the movie comes out, they changed it to John Carter, and there was hardly any trailers, and the trailers that did come out, even though they look fantastic, you didn't really tell you what the movie was about. And it was just because of all that, it was a movie that flopped. Nobody went to go see it. It didn't make its money back, even though the whole thing was basically, set up to make a trilogy, because it's set off from a book series of a big book series of books. And it never really went anywhere. I always sort of connect this movie to Toy Story 2. So if you've seen Toy Story 2, you have Buzz there. He's with Jesse, Bullseye, and Stinky Pete, and he's watching Woody's Roundup. And it's his first time watching it. He's like, "Yeah, all right. Well, that's great. Let's put the next episode on." And then Stinky Pete comes in. He goes, "Oh, it was cancelled." And like Woody's like, "Well, what do you mean it was cancelled? Like, what's going on?" And then Stinky Pete's like, 2 words: Sputnik. Once the astronauts went up, everybody wanted to play with space toys. And it's the same thing. The only difference is, instead of Sputnik, it is Disney Marketing, or just Disney Corporation. Once they did a terrible job on the marketing, which really didn't exist at all, nobody went to go see it. It didn't exist. So it hyped you up. Like I remember seeing the trailer for this and being absolutely enthralled. This idea of this guy, he's on an alien planet surrounded by aliens. You've got these huge, giant gorilla ape sort of monsters that are running after him in an arena, and he's jumping really high. It looked epic to me because, again, 2012, I was a teenager. Like I was still in high school, senior school. Sorry, high school in America, senior school in the UK. And I was enthralled. I thought it was incredible. And I remember going to see this movie and being blown away. And again, being left at the end of like, oh my God, I can't wait to see more. I hope they make another one. And they never did. And then growing up and getting more into movies and learning the history of this film as to why they never made more really break my heart. And it still does break my heart, to be honest. And it's just one of those movies that deserves to be talked about more by more people, to be honest. The only person I've actually seen review this movie since my 4 years doing podcasting is Sean from Review It Yourself. I think him and Sarah watched reviewed it. It's a great review, by the way. Go back and check it out. But they're the only 2 people that I've actually seen talk about this movie, and that's kind of what I do here with this podcast. I like to talk about movies that are unappreciated, movies that aren't talked about, that nobody's shining no light on, and I like to shine on those movies that I feel deserved to have a light shine them, or have another sort of new release on life. which again, I know I'm not that big and popular and famous like Joe Rogan, but I like to think that I make a little bit of a difference, that people are going out and trying these things out for the first time, or maybe go back to them for like a second or third time to actually see what they're like with fresh new eyes. So today we're looking at John Carter. To get straight into it, so the movie synopsis goes as follows. So when Civil War veteran John Carter mysteriously awakes on the surface of Mars, also called Basum, he little expects the adventure that awaits him. Carter reluctantly becomes embroiled in an epic conflict among the Red Planet's inhabitants, including Taz Tarkas, who is played by William Dafoe, and Prince Deja Thoros, as Basum is poised on the brink of collapse. War-weary Carter rediscovers his humanity when he realizes that everyone's fate is in his hands. So that is the story synopsis of John Carter. As for the cast, so we have Taylor Kitsch as John Carter. This was around the time of, I like to call it the Kitsch Renaissance. This was around the time when you saw Taylor Kitsch everywhere. Like he was in Wolverine Origins. He was in Battleship, which I really like. Battleship. That's another movie that not a lot of people like, but I really enjoy Battleships. He was in this. He was in loads of other little short sort of movies here and there. I quite like Taylor Kitsch, but he was like piss in the wind. He came and went. I don't mean that as a bad thing. It's just the fact of he was a rising star, and then he did a few movies that didn't do very well, and then you don't see him much. Like he still acts, but like he's in the background. But I like Taylor Kitsch, and I think he did a good job here as John Carter. And I feel like if this series had been properly marketed and done well, you could have been able to see more of him and possibly him in more movies. But anyway, so Taylor Kitsch, he plays as John Carter. Lynn Collins as Deja Thorns. William Dafoe as Tars Takas, Samantha Morton as Sola, Thomas Hayden Church as Tal Hajus. Thomas Hayden Church, again, he's another brilliant actor. I remember when I first discovered him in the George and the Jungle movies, which I will look at those eventually because I love those films. When he was in George of the Jungle, and he plays such a brilliant part in that. I've been a fan of his ever since. Mark Strong as Matai Shang, and then you've got Sirdan Hinds as Taurus Moz, Dominic West as Sabtan, James Porfoy as Kantos Khan, Bryan Cranston as Powell, Polly Walker as Sakura, Daryl Sabra as Edgar Rice Burroughs, and Arkin Reese as Stayman, and Davud Gamin as Stayman Free. So that is your cast. As for sort of the production, so there is a lot to talk about the production, about the casting, film, and the cinematography and visuals, and like the reshoots and all that. But for me, when I was doing my research on this movie, the most interesting part was actually the development, going into the origins and the involvement with Disney. Then it didn't work with Disney. Then it went to Paramount. Then it went back to Disney. So I'm going to talk about the development, mostly this part, because I find like that's more fascinating. But if you want to check out the production, there are troves and troves of talking about the production online, and that you can find. I found loads, especially when you talked about the reshoots, because this movie went through a lot of reshoots. But today I'm just going to talk about the development, and then we'll get into other things. So I'm going to start with the origins. So the origins not very long. So the film is largely based on a book called A Princess of Mars from 1912, the first in a series of 11 Burroughs novels to feature the interplanetary hero John Carter, and in later volumes, the adventure of his children with Deja Thorns, that is the Princess of Mars. The story was originally serialized in a 6 monthly installments from February to July 1912 in the pulp magazine The All Story. Those chapters, originally titled Under the Moons of Mars, were then collected as a novel and published in hardcover 5 years later from A.C. McClure. Bob Clapton's involvement. So in 1931, director Bob Clampett, approached Edgar Rice Burroughs with the idea of adapting A Princess of Mars into a feature-length animated film. Burroughs responded enthusiastically, recognizing that a regular live-action feature would face various limitations to adapt accurately. So he advised Clampett, to write an original animated adventure for John Carter. Working with Burroughs' son, John Coleman's Burroughs, in 1935, Clampett Clampett used rotoscoped and other hand-drawn techniques to capture the action, tracing the motions of an athlete who performed John Carter's powerful movements in the reduced Martian gravity, and designed the green-skinned four-armed Tarks to give them a believable appearance. He then produced footage of them riding their eight-legged Tarks at a gallop, which had all of their eight legs moving in coordinated motion. He also produced footage of a fleet of rocket ships emerging from a Martian volcano. Metro Gold and Mayer was originally set to release the cartoons, and the studio heads were enthusiastic about the series. The test footage produced by 1936 received negative reactions from film exhibitionists across the US, especially in small towns. Many gave their opinion that the concept of an Earthman on Mars was just too outlandish an idea for Midwestern American audiences to accept. The series was not given the go-ahead, and Clampett was instead encouraged to produce an animated Tarzan series, an offer that he later declined. Clampett recognized the irony in MGM's decision, as the Flash Gordon movie Serial, released in the same year by Universal Studios, was highly successful. He speculated that MGM believed that serials were played only to children during Saturday matinees, whereas the John Carter tales were intended to be seen by adults during the evening. The footage that Clampett produced was believed lost for many years until Burroughs' grandson, Danton Burroughs, in the early 1970s found some of the film tests in Edgar Rice Burroughs Inc.'s archives. He had A Princess of Mars been released, it might have preceded Walt Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in 1937 to become the first animated feature-length animated film. So how's that for a slice of cake? You know what I mean? So if it had been made, it would have predated the Snow White, which we all know is the first feature-length animated movie of all time. It would have been the first, and it would have gone down to history. Even if it was good or not, it doesn't matter. It would have been the first, and maybe it would have had a better legacy. Who knows? But this is where it gets interesting. So Disney comes in. So during the late 1950s, stop motion animation effects director Ray Harrison expressed interest in filming the novels, but it was not until the 1980s that producers Mario Casar and Andrew G. Vanja bought the rights for the Walt Disney Studios via Cinery Pictures, with a view to creating a competitor to the original Star Wars trilogy and Conan the Barbarian. Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio, which I'm sure I've talked about Terry Rossio before, were hired to write, while John McTiernan and Tom Cruise were approached to direct and star. The project collapsed because McTiernan realized that visual effects were not yet advanced enough to recreate Burroughs' vision of Basum. The project remained at Disney, and Jeffrey Katzenberg was a strong proponent of filming the novels, but the rights eventually returned to the Burroughs estate. Right, so that's Disney. So that's where Disney started. Now we look at Paramount. So afterwards, producer James Jacks read Harry Knowles' autobiography, which lavishly praised the John Carter of Mars series. Having read the Burroughs novels as a child, Jacks was moved to convince Paramount Pictures to acquire the film rights. A bidding war with Columbia Pictures followed. After Paramount and Jacks won the rights, Jacks contacted Knowles to become an advisor on the project and hired Mark Protosevich to write the screenplay. Robert Rodriguez signed on in 2004 to direct the film after his friend Knowles showed him the script. Recognizing that Knowles had seen an advisor to many other filmmakers, Rodriguez asked him to be credited as a producer. Filming was set to begin in 2005, with Rodriguez planning to use the all-digital stages he was using for his production of Sin City, a film based on the graphic novel series by Frank Miller. Rodriguez planned to hire Frank Fratetta, the popular Burroughs and fantasy illustrator, as a designer on the film. Rodriguez had previously stirred up film industry controversy owing to his decision to credit Sin City's art and creator Miller as co-director on the film's adaptation. As a result, Rodriguez decided to resign from the Directors Guild of America in 2004. Unable to employ a non-DGA filmmaker, Paramount assigned Kerry Coran to direct and Ethan Kruger to rewrite the John Carter script. The Austrian outback was The Australian, sorry, not Austrian, the Australian outback was scouted as a shooting location. Curran left the film for unknown reasons and was replaced in October 2005 by Jon Favreau. Favreau and screenwriter Mark Fergus wanted to make their script faithful to Burroughs' novels, retaining John Carter's link to the American Civil War and ensuring that the Barsoomian Tarks were 15 feet tall. Previous scripts had made them human size. Favreau argued that a modern day soldier would not know how to fence or ride a horse like Carter, who had been a Confederate soldier. The first film he envisioned would have adapted the first three novels in the Barsoom series: A Princess of Mars, The Gods of Mars, and The Warlords of Mars. Unlike Rodriguez and Curran, Favreau preferred using practical effects for his films and cited Planet of the Apes from 1968 as his inspiration. He intended to use makeup as well as CGI to create the Tarks. In August 2006, Paramount chose not to renew the film rights, preferring instead to focus on its Star Trek franchise. Favreau and Fergus moved on to Marvel Studios and then made Iron Man. So we've got that. Now we go back to Disney. So Andrew Stanton, director of the Pixar animated studios hits like Finding Nemo and WALL-E, which I absolutely adore both of their movies, lobbied Walt Disney Studios to reacquire the rights from Burroughs' estate, since, he says, I'd read the books as a kid. I wanted to see somebody put it on the screen, end quote, he explained. Stanton then lobbied heavily for the chance to direct the film, pitching it as Indiana Jones on Mars. The studio was initially skeptical. Stanton had never directed a live-action film before, and he wanted to make the film without any major stars whose names could guarantee an audience. At least on opening weekend, the screenplay was seen as confusing and difficult to follow. However, since Stanton had overcome similar pre-production doubts to make WALL-E and Finding Nemo into hits, the studio approved him as the director. Stanton noted that he was effectively being loaned to Walt Disney Studios because Pixar is an all-ages brand, and John Carter, in his words, was not going to be an all-ages film. By 2008, the first draft for part one of a John Carter film trilogy was completed. The first film is based only on the first novel. Stanton and his Pixar colleague, Mark Andrews, wrote this draft. In April 2009, author Michael Cabon confirmed he had been hired to revise Stanton and Andrews' script. He says, I'm really good at structure and collaborating, Stanton explained, but Michael is just technically, poetically, and intelligence-wise a better writer. Following the completion of WALL-E, Stanton visited the archives of Edgar Rice Burroughs Inc. in Tarzana, California, not Tarzana. As part of his research, Jim Morris, general manager of Pixar, said the film would have a unique look distinct from Frank Frateza's illustrations, which they both found dated. He also noted that although he had less time for pre-production than for any of his usual animated projects, the task was nevertheless relatively easy, since he had read Burroughs' novels as a child and already visualized many of their scenes. Stanton prepared for directing by losing 20 pounds, by running 15 miles a week, and vowed not to go to his trailer or even sit down except when absolutely necessary to avoid looking like the privileged animation geek who cheated his way to the top. So that is the development. Like, again, I would go into the production, but it would take me forever. There is so much to go into production, talk about like the cinematography and the reshoots, and maybe when I get around to the actual review itself, I'll go into these parts. But I want to talk quickly about marketing, because again, that's what this movie is known for. So John Carter's marketing has been called one of the worst marketing campaigns in movie history. The filmmakers believe that the decisions made in marketing the film were the primary reasons for its failure. A new studio executive team with minimal experience in that side of the business was in charge, and not as emotionally invested in its success as the filmmakers had been. Furthermore, unbeknownst to them, Disney CEO Robert Iger had already began talks with George Lucas about buying Lucasfilm and the Star Wars franchise, eliminate any incentive the company had to launch a successful competing film franchise. It's not alone. John Carter's not alone in this situation. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's a fascinating read if you want to look into it. When Disney bought Lucasfilm, or when they got the rights to Star Wars, there was a lot of projects, a lot of video games, a lot of movies, a lot of animated films that were in the works. And as soon as Disney bought Star Wars, they all just got demolished. They all just went out the window, forgotten, destroyed, dust in the wind. It's fairy dust, gone. And that was it. And I get it from Disney's perspective. They spent a lot of money. I think it was like $1 billion or so on Disney, on Star Wars. Sorry, and that was it. That was their new franchise. Now, hindsight being what it is, they completely destroyed Star Wars. Like, the only good thing that's actually come out of Star Wars is actually the Disney Plus series and the animated stuff. But then even then, when it's like the live action stuff, it's mostly just like Mandalorian. I quite liked Ahsoka, even though other people didn't like it. And Andor is, in my opinion, Andor is probably been one of the best things they've done. And Rogue One, I absolutely love Rogue One. It's one of my favorite Star Wars movies of all time. But I'm not here to talk about Star Wars. But yeah, a lot when Disney bought Star Wars, a lot of things went down the tube. That's where we're going to leave it at, because it's a completely different topic. Anyway, so the head of Walt Disney Studios marketing during the production was M.T. Carney, an industry outsider who previously ran a boutique marketing film in New York. With no previous experience marketing movies, Staten often rejected marketing ideas from the studio. According to those who worked on the film, his ideas were used instead, and he ignores criticism that using a cover version of Led Zeppelin's 1975 song Kashmir in the trailer released in conjunction with an ad aired during that year's Super Bowl would make it seem less current to the contemporary younger audiences the film sought. He also chose billboard imagery that failed to resonate with prospective audiences and put together a preview reel that did not get a strong reception from a conventional audience. Satin said, "My joy when I saw the film first trailer for Star Wars is I saw a little bit of almost everything in the movie and had no idea how it connected, and I had to go see the movie. So the last thing I'm going to do is ruin that little kid's experience." Following the death of Steve Jobs, Stanton dedicated his film in his memory. The effect of other sort of 2011 movies on the box office. So Disney reportedly grew more concerned about the film's prospects after the 2011 failure of the Lionsgate film's remake of Conan the Barbarian, which I still haven't seen. Like John Carter, it was based on a popular fantasy franchise that had been around during the 1980s, been adapted into successful films starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. Lionsgate's version had cost $90 million and starred Jason Momoa. Caban recalls reading a post by one of his screenwriter friends, Sean Hood, about how he dealt with the movie's failure, and for the first time worrying about the possibility that John Carter could suffer the same fate. Cowboys and Aliens, another movie that I love, but also flopped, released in July, also had an effect on John Carter. It too had science fiction and Western elements and did not fare well commercially. That was taken as indicating that contemporary audiences were not interested in Westerns, which is true. I love a good Western, but people nowadays just aren't interested in them. You just don't see many of them anymore because they just don't. They don't work. People just don't go see them. Even if you put aliens in them or you set them on Mars, people aren't interested in them anymore. It's a shame because they're great, but I think the Hateful Eight was probably the last one that actually was really, really good and made loads of money. But yeah, they just don't work. Anyway, or any film set in the American past. So those elements would be downplayed in the trailers and other marketing for John Carter. One of Disney's own recent big budget franchise films was also adding to executives' anxieties about John Carter. In May 2011, release of Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides had done well at the box office, becoming the third highest grossing film domestically that year and making over $1 billion worldwide. However, the film's budget exceeded $400 million. By some estimates, made it the most expensive film ever produced. Its profits were thus lower than a film that popular might have been expected to generate, making Disney fear the same could happen with John Carter. By the time of the reshoots 4 months after on Stranger Tides, it was reported that John Carter would have to make at least $700 million worldwide, more than twice its estimated production costs to justify a sequel. How unfair is that? So, basically, what I can work out after reading all of these, all of this, it was a lot of anxiety. It was, Disney buying Star Wars, and the marketing team had hardly any experience. This movie was just doomed to fail from the get-go. Even if the movie was, and again, in my opinion, it is, but even if the movie was widely loved and everybody went to go see it, it still has a high bar. This movie has to make to 800 to 900 million. Close to $1 billion to be considered to be wanting to be making a sequel. That is crazy. You know, it's really unfair. It's annoyed me. I generally feel really annoyed now, knowing that this movie was put up so. There's such an issue where it's like this movie was so good, but because of the reshoots and because so much went into it, because the marketing was so bad and all this and that, and it came out during a time when there were other big movies, and it hurts my brain. It really does, because it's not fair. And also the fact of the movie was originally titled John Carter of Mars, and then Staten changed the title so that to that from the book's title early in 2011, because not a single boy would go. Later, he removed Mars to make it more appealing to a broader audience, calling the film an origin story about a guy becoming John Carter of Mars. Disney also reportedly believed that the sex appeal of the popular Taylor Kitsch being shirtless throughout the movie would draw women to see the film, since women are believed by Hollywood to be adverse to science fiction. In this account, Mars was taken out from the title. So really bad decisions. Like, had a great name, John Carter of Mars. That is a fantastic name and looks brilliant on a poster. And then they take it out because they just think it ain't going to interest anybody. So it's just going to be like, it's just going to call it John Carter, which is like, in that case, you should call it John Doe, because, you know, it's just the most basic, ordinary, average name ever. And then you feel like, because we've put Taylor Kitsch and he's a handsome man, you're going to get women to come and watch it. Well, no, because if women do go, they're going to go and take their kids. They're not going for themselves. You know, I don't know. I really don't get it. But it's just annoyed me. It has, because this movie is just brilliant. But it's one of those where hardly anybody went to go see it. And it was because the marketing absolutely tanked this film. And as well, it had to make 700 million to justify a sequel, which is absolutely bonkers. Like the new Superman that's come out now, I think that's made 650 million. And like, I think James Gunn has recently come out and he said, because people were basically saying, you know, it's only made this much money, blah, 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 all silly. Like, there's no way, like, you can justify all this and that. And then James Gunn's basically come out and he's going, there's no way that we would base the first movie off a brand new franchise success on if we should make more, really. And he went into elaborate that, and I'm basically paraphrasing, but what he means by that is the fact of the first movie comes out, granted, it's done really, really well, but if it didn't, we wouldn't just up ship and leave. We would be like, well, that one didn't do very well, but we've got others in the pipeline. We've got others working. Again, he's got Lanterns. He's got the TV show. He's got Peacemaker season 2. I think he's finished shooting Supergirl, and he's got other projects in like the new Batman as well, and all the stuff he's working on. You know, so don't let if Superman didn't do so well, don't let that all hinge on the fact of if you're going to make more. Just we'll make more, and if it doesn't do very well, we'll learn from our mistakes and we'll try to make the next one better. And I think that's good. That's the way you should run a studio. That's the way you should run a franchise. Not the fact of, this movie didn't make this much money, so we can't justify a sequel. Like, no, it's good. Like, it's become a cult classic now, and people have go back and people really loved it, enjoyed it. Maybe it is worth it. Like, I always think of Tron. Like, Tron came out, brilliant movie, really sort of bleeding edge, broke the mold of what you can do with like computer generation, but didn't do it very well. So years and years and years go by. Tron Legacy comes out. I love Tron Legacy. Fantastic film. I really, really enjoy it. But again, it didn't do very well. And then years and years later, and then Disney comes back with Tron Ares that comes out. Or actually, by the time this is out, it's probably already out now. As a recording this, it's not out. But as of this episode coming out, Tron Ares is out. And I don't know if that movie has done well or not, but it's still like Disney has always come back to Tron. So why couldn't John Carter be something that Disney always comes back to? Or another studio gets the rights and does it properly, makes it into a TV series like on streaming, or decides to give it a go. I don't know, but I just really love this franchise. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting into the actual review before even watching the movie again. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to go off and watch the film, and then when we come back, I'll give my thoughts and feelings, like first impressions, talk about the story, and so I'll see you all in a minute. And welcome back, everybody. So I've now watched John Carter. To be honest, the best way to start of it is, as you know, I love it. So I'm not going to start there because that's the obvious. I want to start somewhere a bit different. Since I was a young lad, since I was very young, I've always had a fascination with space. Growing up with my dad, he always had the Discovery Channel on. And before Discovery Channel changed to Ancient Aliens and all things like that, even though I love that kind of stuff, before it was that, it was very educational based. Everything that was on there was science based. Same with the History Channel as well. And I grew watching those sort of stuff because my dad had control of the TV. And one of the things that fascinated me the most was whenever they talked about the universe, whenever they talked about the sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Planet, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, when they talked about the planets, when they talked about constellations, it just fascinated me. But at a very, very young age, I've always been very awestruck and very sort of connected to Mars. I don't know why. And apparently it's a very common thing that a lot of humans have this connection to Mars, that they just have this feeling that they need to go there, that they have this feeling they need to go there, return. And again, there's loads of theories, which I'm not going to get into, but there's a lot of theories. The reason for that is the fact of that humans are from Mars. And there has been found proof that there are asteroids that crash landed to Earth centuries, billions of years ago, during the sort of like primordial soup that was Earth. And then as they crash landed, bacteria from the Martian rock sort of connected and spread and mutated with the microbes that are on this planet, and plexo, we have life. And so there's a theory like that, but there's other theory like humans are actually Martians, that ancient humans and came from Mars and all that. Again, I don't want to get into it, but I've always had a fascination with Mars, and I feel like that is what drew me to this movie when I watched it in 2012, was the fact of it's on Mars. It's somewhere different, but at the same place, it's somewhere that feels very much like home, because it is very close. Like, it's the closest planet to us, and granted, Mars isn't totally habitable. It's the closest thing we have to a sort of close to a habitable sort of planet like Earth. The only difference is Mars is dead, but there is proof that Mars once had life. And I've just always been fascinated with that. And I feel like that is what drew me to this movie back in 2012. And I got the same feeling then as I do now when I rewatched it for this review, is that as I was looking at the Martian surface, as I was looking at all the alien races, and the way that the whole story really explains this idea of aliens and explains the idea of why the red planet looks the way it does. It's very clever and very much very well done. And I just love it. As I was watching this movie, I was just enthralled. I was just like, how can this movie had failed? Obviously, we've explained in the introduction why it failed, because of the marketing. And what I found when again, as I do with every movie review that I do now, when I put it onto Twitter and Discord and everywhere to say to people, look, I'm watching John Carter, what are your thoughts? So many people messaged me back, and it killed me when they did it. It's not their fault, but it killed me when they did it. When people messaged me back going, I've never seen it, never watched it, never heard of it. Neil from the We Need the Rose podcast, he told me that he never watched it because of all the bad reviews he heard about it. And I kept trying to say to him, like, no, generally, you need to give it a go. It's really, really good. Like, it's one of them movies that you can hear bad things about, and then you watch it and you just sit there and you go, I don't get why people were so negative on it, and I don't understand why nobody went to go see it. And maybe it's nostalgia talking, maybe it's the fact of because I love it so much that I'm a bit biased. I do understand that, but this is one of them movies like Cat in the Hat, but obviously for a different reason. This is one of them films that I will happily defend till my dying breath, that John Carter is a good movie, and it's a brilliant movie. They used practical effects. They used CGI where they had to. They shot in the desert, and I think it was the deserts of Arizona, which is I think currently where NASA is actually doing tests with like their rover probes, and they're actually doing tests and that for astronauts to get them ready for the Martian surface and things like that. And if I remember correctly, I feel like The Martian was actually shot in Nevada, I think, because it's the closest thing we have to sort of a Martian surface. So, knowing all of that and where they shot and just getting lost in the story, like the movie's about 2 hours long, 2 hours, about 14 minutes, I think, to be exact. but it doesn't feel like a 2 hour long movie. The pacing is so well done. It goes so quickly. Like you've got the first 20 minutes when you've got like, you meet John Carter and you learn that he's a Confederate soldier, that, he doesn't want anything to do with the war. And then all of a sudden he gets captured. He runs away from the Confederate army as well as the Indians, finds his way to a cave, gets transported to Barsoom, which is Mars. And then, like, that's the first 20 minutes. So you don't spend a lot of time with it. The beginning of the movie does enough what it needs to do to set up the story. And then for the rest of it, you're on Mars. And then from there, you're off to the races. It's just visually stunning. The story's incredible. The Tarks, the aliens are amazing. The acting, like William Dafoe as a Tark, is brilliant. Everything is just like, my mind is just like, you seen that meme with that guy? He's got that like turtleneck, and he's just like, wow, like his mind's just blown. That's just me as I'm watching it. I'm just like, oh my god, And again, I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for what I'm about to say, and I don't care. And people, if they want to unfollow me for this or sort of discredit me forever, that's completely fine. But in my opinion, this movie is as good as Dune. If you've seen, like, I'm a big fan of Dune. I am. Like, again, I've got the last 2 books to read. I love the Dune series. I love what Villeneuve, I always struggle with his name, David Villeneuve, what he's done with part 1, part 2 of Dune, which I've watched them both. They are absolutely extraordinary. Like, they're masterpieces. They're incredible. They're gorgeous. They're beautiful. As I was watching this movie, I'm sitting there thinking, this could rival Dune. This could be like the next Dune sort of franchise. You know what I mean? Like, it's set on an alien planet that's very close to home. Humans have a connection with Mars that it is, and it's like it's just asking for a reboot. It's asking for someone to take me and try again. As I was watching it, I was thinking, if this is what they could have do in 2012. Now, granted, I think the budget was like 246 to 250 million, so it was a lot of money, right? And the movie made its money back, but because of the marketing and because of tax and all that, it actually came at a loss, which I'll get on talking about that sort of near to the end. But the movie made enough money, so there's proof that people want to go watch it. So it still made 350 million on a dodgy marketing campaign. Just think of, if this movie was properly marketed, how much money it could have made, where it could have been, how many people could. We could be watching. I could be sitting there going, I can't wait to watch the sequels, because this movie leaves me wanting more. It leaves me sitting there going, I want to see more. And it's just one of them things where I'm sitting there, I'm like, somebody needs to take this off Disney, because Disney won't touch this now. This won't be like Tron. This is not like Star Wars. This is not going to be like the Pirates of the Caribbean. Disney, I've got it, and they won't do anything with it. And if they do, I'll be very much surprised. And it's just one of those where it's like I said in the introduction, but other studios came along and took it. Netflix, Paramount, but Amazon, HBO, somebody who's got the prestige, who is able to take these big projects, who's got the money to fund them, to properly do them justice. I don't care if it's a streaming or if it's a movie. Whatever they decide to do, I just want this source material to be done justice. Not that it wasn't done justice here, it was done perfect justice here. I want to clarify that. Disney, fair play to them, and to the director, which his name I'm blanking on at the moment, Andrew Stanton. What he and the cast and the visuals and all that, what they were able to do here was visionary, was incredible. It's just because it belongs to Disney now, Disney will do nothing with it. So it's one of those where it's like, I want somebody to take it off Disney so they can properly do this series justice, and that we get more, and that we get the next few books. I think there's about 7+ books in this series. Not that they have to do all 7, but you know what I mean, like, to tell the story, because this could be the next Dune. I believe that. I thoroughly believe it. I was watching, I was thinking, like, this could be the next, and this could have been the prelude to Dune. If Disney had done its job and done it properly, who knows right now? People could be looking back on Dune going, oh God, it reminds me of John Carter. I remember and then go back and watch John Carter. But nobody's saying that, because nobody knows it exists, because it came and went, and it really annoys me. I'm getting annoyed. I don't want to be annoyed, because I want to be happy and cheerful. I've got to calm down. Anyway, so that's sort of my first impressions. Is I love it, and I just feel like it's brilliant, and I just want more people to watch it, because it's so good. It's really, really good. And as for the story, so the story sort of focuses around Telekich, or sort of his name's John Carter. As I mentioned, he's a Confederate soldier who he's left. He's gone AWOL. He's not interested. Like he's helped them fought the war, and he's lost everything. And you find out later in the story what he's lost and why he's so adamant where he doesn't want to fight anybody's war. He's not a gun for hire anymore. He just wants to get his gold and live his life. You know, he's done. He's a deserter. He ends up getting sort of caught again by the Confederate Army. And Corporal Powell, who is played by the man from Breaking Bad. His name is Bryan Cranston. That's it. I'm going to pull up IMDb. So no, all right, IMDb's up. So Bryan Cranston, he plays Commander Powell. He basically says to him, like, look, you know, you're a distinguished soldier. Come fight for me. Come help sort of keep the Apaches away from all the people that have sort of laid claim, sort of stated their claim, shall we say, in Arizona. And he keeps trying to escape. It's quite funny, actually. He keeps trying to escape. John Carter does. And he's like, look, I don't want to fight for you. I gave you my all and I lost everything. I'm not interested. And he manages to escape. As he escapes, as he's being chased by the Confederate Army, the Apaches come and he's trying to talk to them, say, like, look, you know, I don't want anything to do with this. Just, you know, leave me out of it. But one of the Confederate soldiers ends up getting a bit trigger happy, shoots one of the Apaches, so they both get attacked. And you see glimmers throughout the story where Johnny is an honourable man. It's just the fact of he's lost so much that he doesn't want to fight. He's in it for himself, really. He's in it for me, because there's nobody else but him. And General Powell, he gets shot. John goes back and saves him. They've run off to a cave, and the Apaches, like, you know, there's symbols all over the cave. They get scared, so they run away. And as John goes into the cave, he finds the cave that he was looking for, and it's huge, like, payload of gold all in there. And as he's in there, there's a guy appears behind him out of nowhere and goes to stab him. And Commander Powell basically says to him, John, turn around. He turns around, shoots him, kills the guy. And the guy has got this amulet in his hand, and he's saying these words. And before he can say the last words, John takes it off him, and he's whispering a word. And John leans in and goes, what is it? What are you saying? And he says, Basum. And then John, with it in his hand, he says, Basum. And that transfers him over through data, which is really fascinating, actually. Kind of reminds me of Tron, really. Always leads back to Tron. Transfers him like data all the way over to the surface of Mars, and this is where our adventure sort of goes. And I love this idea when you're on Mars, that because we have gravity, more gravity on Earth than they do on Mars, that our bone density is different, so that when John Carter gets to Mars, or Basum as they call it, as the people of Mars calls it, he can jump really, really high, like a spider monkey. He can jump like miles, like kind of like a Hulk super jump, best way to explain it. And you have this funny moment where he's learning like a baby. He's learning how to jump and how to run and walk and that sort of thing. And as he does that, he also gets enhanced strength, because again he's really strong. He ends up like killing one Tark with a single blow, you know. So he's really strong. He is really fast. He can jump really high, and he ends up meeting the Tarks, and he doesn't understand them at first. And I to be honest, me being a person who loves science fiction, I would have happily had the Tarks speaking, I'm going to call it Tarkanese, I don't know what the language is called, but talk in Tarkanese for the whole movie. You know, have William Dafoe talk in this alien language, and all the other people that play Tarks, like Thomas Hayden Church, again, he plays Tal Haj. You know, I would have happily had them all talk in the Tarkish language. But eventually, they give him this special drink. It's called the Voice of Basum. And again, the world building here is just incredible. It makes me want to read the books. And I don't know how I haven't got around to reading these books, but I've gone to Goodreads and I've put the first book on my list, on my to be read. So I will get around to reading these books, because I'm just enthralled. Anyway, so you have all this amazing world building. He has this thing, and then he kind of like the babblefish. It translates in his head, and he can speak Basum. He can speak to the Tarks, and they speak English to him, and he can speak to them, and they can understand each other. And you learn about the Tarks and that. And to be honest, as the story goes on, again, I don't want to sort of do a play-by-play of the story, but as the story goes on, you are reminded to very much in the way of this idea that you have this main bad guy, who he's being led by the Thralls, and the Thralls are basically like the Watchers of Marvel. They watch species basically. They've been here for since the beginning, really, and they watch species, and they have a hand in which way they decide that life should go. And if life gets too close to discovering this technology that they have, this ancient wisdom that they all have, then they basically move her in, and they start making sure that idiots, like, you have people, the bad people, become in charge, because you'd rather have somebody, as they say in the movie, you'd rather have somebody who is an imbecile, who is a fool, who's an idiot, who is a destroyer, who has control of this power, because an idiot is easily controllable, whereas you have somebody smart who has this power, you can't control them, you can't coerce them. So they always choose the vicious one, the evil one, the villain, basically, to have this power to rule, so that they can be manipulated, really. And it's all just a game to them, really. They've been to Earth. They have watchers on Earth. They have watchers on Basum, and I'm sure there's watchers on other planets with life as well. And the lore there is fascinating. Now that you have the goddess, you have the one, really, that they all pray to, and the Tarks pray to her. And there's one bit where they go to this old ancient Tark temple, and you can see murals, and the watchers are there with the goddess. And there was one stage when the watchers, these Tals, were telling the Tarks, were leading the Tarks, and then they led them to ruin. Basically, they were leading them to success, and that once they had met sort of where they needed to be, they were dropped like a stone. And then the Tarks are just, again, savages now. Like they have to hide away from the people, the red men, as they call them, the red mans of Mars, the people of Mars. And it's just fact, like, the world building is just incredible. And again, like I said, this movie's 2 hours long, but it goes by so quickly, but you get so much information, and it all makes sense because you have the beginning. You have to start on Earth because you have to find out who John Carter is. And then you get to Mars. And again, you're only like 20 minutes on Earth. Then you're in Basum, you're on Mars. And the story just goes from there. You learn more about these people, about the struggle they have. And as I mentioned, as I said at the beginning of start of this review, they do a great job to explain as to why Mars looks the way it is, where you've got the main bad guy, who is played by, let me have a look here. I can't find his picture. There you go. By Dominic West. He plays Sabtan. Sabtan, he's the villain. He's been given this power by the Thralls, and he is basically, before he's been given this power, he basically wanted to destroy Basum, and he wanted to take over. So he was destroying the land, all the greenery. He was destroying all the oceans and the lakes. And that's why Mars looks the way it does. And that's why when you look at pictures of Mars now, it's all rocky, it's all hilly, because he destroyed it all. And that one thing, the little bits of detail that I love, is when you get close to these rock formations, you can see that they're not rocks, that they're ancient buildings, and they're cities that have just been crumbled to dust, because after ravages of war and the dust storms and the weather and all that Mars has, it's just eroded away, so it no longer looks like a city. It just looks like a selection of rocks. But if you get close, you can see the bits of detail, what used to be a window, what used to be a wall, and this sort of thing. And I love that world building, because during the 1800s and during like the beginning of like the 1900s, and even way before that, when astronomers were first looking at Mars, when they first perceived Mars, they believed there was life on Mars, and they saw the great fissures, the great canyons that are in Mars, and the detail. Again, telescopes weren't very powerful back then. And they looked at this detail, and they believed that Mars had canals, and that it was full of life, and that you could, if you Google, it's absolutely fascinating to look into, by the way. But if you Googled what they believed, there's loads of like artificial sort of concepts of what they believed it was, and there's cities around these big canals, and that Mars looks the way it does, but there is greenery, there is life there. And again, as our technology got better, we actually found that wasn't sadly true, and that the Mars is a dead planet. It's still alive, like its core's still alive, but there's no life on the surface, really. And that there has I think Curiosity rover has found sort of evidence that there is microbial dead life. I think they found like bacteria in that. There's like microbes that are dead. So that it did have life at one stage. It did have water at one stage. But I love taking the real world concept, the sad truth that we know about Mars currently, and then you have sort of this version that there is life on Mars. The reason it looks the way it does is because a great destroyer came and destroyed it, and I love that. And again, somebody who has a fascination with Mars, who would love to, I'd love to go to Mars. I don't want to go on a one-way trip. I would happily go when they've buffed out all the kinks and that they can take me and bring me back. Then I'll go to Mars. But as of now, I'm fine. But somebody who has a fascination with that planet, to have that idea of that concept of why it looks the way it does, I love it. I do. And like the Tarks, they live in like you can see like this old. They live in the destroyed cities. They live in the ruins of the destroyed cities, and they hide. And when I can't remember what they're called. I'm just going to call them sort of the Martians because it's easier. When the Martians come, the humans, the people, well, they look like people, but they're not humans. Anyway, because their blood's blue. It's not. It's not red like ours. Anyway, I'm getting off track. When they come over, the Tarks hide. They're like, you're the sand, you're the rocks, hide. So they hide away from the Martians. And I love that. I love that bit of world building. And yeah, as you go through the story, and there's so many great action scenes and so many great battles. Like the beginning of the movie sort of starts with a great battle. And then you have the battles with the Tarks, and then how the Tarks look and how the world building looks. Everything, like you can see where they did practical where they could, and I love practical effects, as you all know, but they did the practical effects where they needed to, and it works. And then they did the CGI where they had to, but everything else in between they shot on location. You can see nothing was soundstage, everything was there, and I love that because that makes it more real. I actually believe you're on another planet because it looks like you're in an area that's otherworldly. I'd believe that. I've never been to America, but if I went to Arizona, Nevada, if I went to these deserts, the Death Valley, and I walked around and there was no sign of life around me, I would believe that I was on Mars. I would believe I was in another planet because it looks that way. And again, like I say, if you've seen the movie Martian, I'm sure they shot a lot of it there because it looks like the Martian surface. You've just got to, change the sort of camera lens so it's a bit more sort of brighter, a lot more orangey red than it is here on Earth. And yeah, I just the story, brilliant. I love it. And I love how they bring in Edgar Rice Burroughs as well. So the writer of the original stories and the writers of Tarzan, they link that in. So it turns out that Edgar Rice Burroughs is the grandson or nephew, I'm not sure, of John Carter, and that he leaves his story, and that he's telling his story through a book to Edgar Rice Burroughs, to Ed, as he calls him, or Ned, as he calls him, and that he wants him to be his protector, that he wants Ned to look after his body. And he says to him, like, find a purpose, write a book, find love, and this sort of thing. And he does, and he goes off and he writes John Carter of Mars, and he writes those stories, leading off from the stories that his uncle or whatever told him about. And I love that. I know it's not real, but I love that idea, that world building. It just makes it feel a lot more real. And I always loved that when I watched stories when I was younger, where you had a bit of truth in with the legend, so it makes it feel a bit more real. It feels a bit more possible, and it makes your imagination sing, and it makes your just your imagination, your heart, you just beat, just be like, it could be real. I know it's not, but that doesn't matter because I believe it to be real. I feel like it's real. I feel with this story. I feel with the characters. I'm more interested. Like I care more. I'm enthralled. I am, as they say, I'm sucked into the book. I'm sucked into the screen. I can't take my eyes off it. And it's true with this movie. Like normally when I watch a movie, even a movie that I love, when I reviewed Rat Race, because I've seen Rat Race so much, even though I love it and I absolutely adore that movie, I looked on my phone every now and then just to see what time it is, just to see if anybody messaged me on Twitter or whatever. With this movie, because it's been so long since I've watched it, and because of the visual sort of soup and the visual sort of cake, and I just wanted to devour it, and the story, and there is so much detail that, like, if you're not paying attention, you'll miss certain details because the world building's great. Like, it's not shoved in your face; it's done so gradually, and you learn more about the people and their relationship and the Tarks and the kingdoms and like honestly, there's so much detail that it'd take me forever to get into it all. But because of all that, I didn't really look at my phone much. My phone was down. I'm sitting there going, I'm just enthralled. I'm just like, this could be like the next Dune. Somebody needs to take this franchise, take it away from Disney, and do something with it because it deserves it so much. And yeah, it's so good. I'll be honest, the only real negative I have, and it's not a negative to be honest, so I don't really want to call it a negative, but the only real thing I have about this movie is that even though I like Taylor Kitsch, I think Taylor Kitsch is a brilliant actor. I think he's really, really good. And like I said, he came and went. Like this is the period of when he comes and he's in every movie, and then you just don't see him much anymore. Like he was the rising star. But even though I like him in this, I loved him in Battleships, and I like him in other movies. I don't feel like he's a leading man. I feel like he's a supporting character. I feel like he does good when he's in a supporting role. Like I liked his version of Remy LeBeau in X-Men Wolverine Origins. He was a side character. He just played Remy LeBeau. He was the Gambit in that movie, and I think he did a good job. You know, as a side character, he wasn't there very long. As a supporting role, he was sort of interesting, and I feel like that he's more of a supporting actor. He supports the main actor, and even though he does a good job here, and I can believe that Taylor Kitsch, he would be a Confederate soldier, you know, from Virginia. I could believe that because because he's American, but he has that twang as well. Like I could believe he could do that role really, really well. And he'd be great in a Western sort of. I know Westerns don't really do well much anymore, but I could see him in that role. Problem is when you get to Mars, it's just one of the things like, even though he's doing a good job, and even though everybody else is doing a good job, it's just one of those I'm looking at him like, he's doing good, but he could be great. It could be better. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just feel like he's not... Again, I don't say it without sounding negative because it is going to come off negative, but I don't mean it to be negative. It's just the fact that I just don't feel like he should have been John Carter. He could have been like again, I believe him to be a Confederate soldier. It's just when you get to Mars and I don't know. It's just think about his acting where it's like it's good, but I just don't believe he is John Carter. He just doesn't have that look to him. Confederate soldier, yes. John Carter when he's on Mars, not really. I don't know who could have. And I haven't really put much thought into it. It's just one of them things of like, I like him in the role. He does a good job. And again, he makes me care about him, and he makes me care about the other characters. And I do. And when you learn about the thing that he lost, and the reason why he went AWOL and sort of abandoned the Confederate Army, and why he didn't want to fight for the Tarks, why he didn't want to be Dark Tat Soldier, and why he didn't want to join their war. Like he didn't want nothing to do with the Martians' war. He wasn't interested. He just wanted to find the talisman and find a way back home to his goal. Like he wasn't interested until he met the princess, and he basically fell in love with her, which I don't blame him because it's Lynn Collins and she's a gorgeous Juilliard trained actress. That's a true fact, by the way. She is a trained Juilliard actress and she does a brilliant job at here. But even though all of that, it's still one of the things of like, it's his face. I think it's his face. I think he just, I don't know. Maybe he's just too pretty. I don't know. It's just something about him. It's just, no, I just don't see him as leading man. But he's a good actor. And I feel like, and I'll be honest, I haven't seen him actually in many things recently. None that I can recall. But I remember during this time, he was everywhere. And then he just went, to be honest. And I think it's like, it's the same with the guy that played Jake Sully in Avatar. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was in everything as well. Like he was in Transformers Terminator, and he was in a lot of other things. And then he kind of came and went. And again, I think the last thing I actually saw him in was Avatar 2, Way of the Water. And that was the last thing I've actually seen. But then again, you don't actually see him. It's more of his motion capture, his voice. He's there, but he's not there, if you know what I mean. So yeah. But like, yeah, Taylor Kitsch is probably the only real downside I have. But then again, he still does a good job. So it's not a bad thing. It's just the fact of if they were to do this again, or if another studio was to take the license and do it again, probably get somebody else. I don't know who it could be, but I don't know. To me, it just Taylor Kitsch probably wasn't the best. I know Tom Cruise was on, but again, I don't believe Tom Cruise could have done a good job here either. It's hard to again. I'm not a casting director. It's really hard to cast roles, but I just don't see Taylor as it. But again, he still did a good job. But like, Lynn Collins did a great job as Deja. Like I said, she's a Juilliard trained, so she knows what she's doing, and she does a brilliant job here. Again, I don't remember actually seeing many things with Lynn in. This is probably the only movie that I can probably think of actually seeing her in, but again, she does a great job. William Dafoe is always brilliant as Tars Tarkas, as the great chieftain of the Tarks. Again, he's CGI, like he's an alien, but to hear his voice and hear him speaking in the Turkish language, and then to sort of speak in English, we're still with that voice, and you can understand why he was cast, because you believe from listening to that voice that he is a warrior, that you believe that he would be chieftain. So again, great casting, like in William Dafoe, just brilliant. And Thomas Hayden Church, he plays Tal Hajjar, and he's another Tark, but he's more of like the brute sort of Tark. He's kind of like Tars' right-hand man, and he is very brutish. He's very sort of like, I want to challenge for leadership. And then Tars Tarkas goes up to him sort of, and they have these like really cool sort of like what they call tusks, and they lock tusks. And so does anybody take him up on his challenge? Because again, it has to be a committee thing. They all have to agree to it. And nobody does. And he looks around and not a single person, because you can see the loyalty they have for like William Dafoe's Tarkas. It's brilliant. To be honest, I'd love a whole movie just with the Tarks. Nobody else but me would go see it, but I'm just fascinated with them. To tell you the truth, I was actually more fascinated with them and about their mythology and the way they are and all of that. I'd spend more time with them than I would with the Martians. Again, they're not called Martians, something else, but I can't remember the name. But this is the thing. I'd rather spend more time with the Tarks, which in a way you do spend more time with the Tarks than you do with anybody else, than anything else. But I love the Tarks. I think they're brilliant. Mark Strong does a good job as Matty Shang again, but Mark Strong is great in everything, so it's not really a surprise. His character is one of them Thrawn things, one of the Watchers. That's what he is, So he's there in the shadows, and they can shapeshift, and he plays a great job. Trying to think what else. Dominic West, again, he plays the sort of the main villain. Again, same thing with Dominic West. He's a great actor, but him as Sabtan, he's a gorgeous actor. He's a pretty guy. But again, it's one of them things of like, you're a good villain, but I just don't see you in this role. I wouldn't have cast him in the role as the villain, to be honest, because he just doesn't. He can play a villain, but he just not here. Then James Porfoy, he plays Kantos Khan. He is one of the Queen's Guard. Again, but I feel like that he's a bit wasted here, because he's a brilliant actor, but you don't get enough of him. He's just kind of there. He has one funny moment where he goes to see John Carter, because John's in prison, and he goes up to him and he says, "Take me hostage." And John's like, "What?" He goes, he points down to his knife like, "Take my sword." And John's like, I don't understand what you want me to do." And in the end, he pulls his sword, turns around, and ends up putting the sword and putting it to his throat and giving it to John. And like he says to like John, like, we've got it. It's a cool little funny moment and a great scene. But I just feel like having somebody like James Porfoy in that role is again fantastic, brilliant. But just do something with him. You're gonna have a brilliant actor like him. Do something with him. Have more of him in there. And I know there was reshoots, a potentiality that there was more of him. Maybe, I don't know, but it just feels that you don't get a brilliant actor like him and then not do anything with him. But yeah, so the whole cast is brilliant. Everybody did a fantastic job. I really, really enjoy the whole cast. The music is brilliant as well. It makes you feel like you're like, oh, it's epic. It's grandiose. It's operatic. I go back to Dune. It feels like Dune. It feels like Star Wars. It feels like, some of the greatest science fiction movies. When you have these great, and even not just that, like these Troy and Gladiator, it feels when the battles are happening, the music's pumping, and your blood starts pumping, your heart starts racing, and you just feel like I'm ready to get a sword and join in the fight, because there's this brilliant scene. Oh, I love this scene. So you thought the Battle of the Bastards was brutal. So there's a rule in Hollywood that if it's I think it's an under 15 or under 18 movie, you can't have blood and gore. Like you can't have humans being killed, but there is a way around that. Robots and aliens, or monsters. If you have robots, aliens, and monsters, you can kill them. You can chop their heads off, chop arms off, as long as they're aliens, robots, or monsters, and the blood is not red. I think that's it. Yeah, then you can do it. And the Tarks, their blood's blue as well. So everybody on Mars, their blood is blue. There's this brilliant scene where you've got John, and then you've got his little alien dog, which I love. This thing, I love a plushie of this thing. It's brilliant. And he looks at, I can't remember the name of the little dog, but he looks at it and he goes, "Go, like, leave me." And the dog looks at it, makes a noise, and like they're bonded. Like there's a bit of dialogue in the story where it's like, you belong to him, or he belongs to you now. Like he will follow you anywhere. Like you are bonded together forever. Like you are sort of soul bounded. And he looks at this little dog thing, and the dog looks at him, and he's like, "I'm not going anywhere," sort of thing. And then, as you've got all this big horde of like hundreds of thousands of Tarks just running at John, he's got two swords in his hands. And again, with his enhanced agility and enhanced strength, he just jumps over them as they run at him, jumps in the middle, and he's just swinging like crazy. He's chopping arms off, chopping legs off. And like there's this all around him is just a crater of bodies, and in the middle is him, and all around him is just piles and piles of dead Tarks and bodies. And then you've got the dog thing is jumping around because this dog can run like it's like the Flash. It's super quick. It's running around. It's jumping on these little. They're not on horses, but they're like on back of these like monster horse things. And the dog's jumping. He's pulling these Tarks off, ripping them to shreds as he's jumping. He's biting them in half. Like it's really brutal. And like I'm sitting there going, like it's incredible. Like I am just glued to the screen. Like again, I'm sitting there thinking, why did nobody go see this fucking film? Why did nobody go see it? This film is great. This film's brilliant. And you feel like I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. And I do apologize for swearing there, but I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Like I'm taking these medication, and everybody's looking at me like I'm mad, and I'm sitting there going, no, it's good, trust me, it's good. Like you've got to watch it, and you'll get it. And everybody's looking at me like, I don't want what you're drinking. Like go away, crazy man. You know what I mean? Like it's generally that good that I'm just like, I just don't understand why anybody's not watching this movie. It's just too good not to watch. You know, like I said, the production is brilliant. You know, on set, on location, it's fantastic. The art design, the design of the Tarks, design of the Martians, and the ships they use, they run off light, they run off solar, so they look like what they call now. I'm going to really kick myself. The Throppers from Dune. They look like giant sort of dragonfly sort of things. The Throppers from Dune, they look like them, but they've got solar sails and they sail through the sky because again they use the sun. They don't sail on water. They sail up they're like gliders. They're fantastic, you know. But the design of the weapons are very much like sort of beginning of 1900s, First World War sort of weapons. But it's also very futuristic at the same time. And the armor looks great, and the sort of alien languages that they've got, and the calligraphy, and oh my god, like I just can go on and like this just breaking down this world and this story. It could be its whole sort of. I could do a whole series on it, just breaking down the Tharks, the Martians, the whole idea between the gods and the Watchers, and all of that, like Basum, and I could just spend ages, but I can't because again we'll be here all day. But the production is just legendary. It's so good. Overall thoughts coming to it now. As you can tell, I absolutely love it. I adore this movie. It is absolutely brilliant. And I just hope with this review that I just convince more people to give it a go. Disney really dropped the ball on this one. Disney, and I'm coming to believe this now, that Disney wanted this to fail because they had Star Wars. They wanted it to fail. And it's not just this one. When Disney got Star Wars, a lot of things failed as well. And there's a whole list of things that just went to the gutter when Disney got Star Wars. Because once they got Star Wars, they got the cash cow. They didn't need it, even though they've dropped the ball with Star Wars many times. It's one of those where it's like, you know, now they've got it, they don't need anything competing against it. So it's one of them things like it deserves your time. Even if you watch it and you don't feel like it's as brilliant as I think it is, just give it a go. Give it a watch. If you've got Disney Plus, it's on there. You can get it on DVD. Grab the Blu-ray. The Blu-ray is phenomenal. I've already pre-ordered the blue. Well, say pre-ordered. I've already bought. Well, I bought the Blu-ray. It's on its way soon. But just get it. Let Disney know. Just tell them like people are watching John Carter now. People are talking about it, and hopefully Disney will go. We'll give that a go again, or at least it's popular, but we've got nothing to do with it. It will tell other studios, let's buy that off Disney. Like, this is one of them sort of things where I put a call out to everybody, be like, look, if you can do, if you've got the ability to watch this movie or to give it a go, please do. Even we don't get any attraction, it doesn't go anywhere. I just want people to watch it and just experience it because it is generally just a really good film. It's just that good. And yeah, so I love it. I really, really do. That's my sort of overall thoughts on it. As for what you think, so you've heard what I think. This is what you all think. So, as I do with all the time, I asked onto Twitter what people's opinions, what people's thoughts and feelings are on this movie. And as always, you guys didn't let me down. So the first one we have from the Bitches with Beards podcast. They write, I love this. I love this at the cinema. The trailers were phenomenal, but it was killed by Disney's lack of faith in the project. I also wonder if some of the cold feet came from the impending Star Wars deal. Still, it's a really solid movie and needed more snaps. I completely agree. And he's not wrong. He's completely right. At the end of the day, it's not. I don't think it's complete lack of faith. I think it's just a complete lack of care. It's a fact of, well, we have Star Wars now. That deal is closed in. Doesn't matter really. Like, if the movie doesn't make money, doesn't make money. If it does, it does. But I don't know. If this movie had made money, maybe they would have made a sequel. Because it did. It made a profit. It just didn't make enough. It still came out at a loss. But even so, they had Star Wars. So it's a shame. It really is. But no, thank you for your comment. Then we had Desert of the Real podcast. They say, Disney kept trying to find their next Pirates franchise, but this one feels like it was made with genuine care and effort and worthy to be a John Carter adaptation. The scene that juxtaposes the Civil War battle with an alien battle is the standout. Yeah, that scene's brilliant. He's right. Disney has always, since, like, again, I love the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. I love the first 3 Pirates movies. I've actually reviewed all the Pirates movies now if you want to go check them out. But ever since their cash cow in terms of the Pirates movies, ever since then, they've always been trying to find their next sort of Pirates franchise. They tried this. They had the Lone Ranger. They tried Tron again with Tron Legacy. There were others as well that they've tried, and they're still doing it now. They're still chasing that cash cow. And even now, it's been announced recently, which I think is absolutely a deplorable idea, but they're doing it anyway. They're already planning on doing a Pirates of the Caribbean 6 and bringing back Johnny Depp and bringing back Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley and all the original cast. And I'm like, no, stop, don't do it. So even now, Disney is chasing that Pirates money. And I don't think they're going to get it, because he's spot on. What he said is the fact of, when you watch this movie, you can tell that there was genuine love and care for the source material, for everything. There was no half-heartedness. Like, everything was done properly. On-set locations, practical effects, used CGI when and where they had to. They told a fluid story, from start, middle, and end. It was just let down. So it had genuine love and care. You could tell that there was so much passion that went into this, and everybody was enjoying it, and it was just brilliant. It just, sadly, it came at the wrong time. Maybe if this movie came a year earlier, before the Disney merger, who knows? With a better marketing team. And it's one of those that we'll never know. We will never know the true reason. We can sit here and speculate, but at the end of the day, it's one of those where Disney is chasing that Pirates of the Caribbean money, and are constantly chasing it, and are still chasing it, and who knows if they'll ever find it. But they had it and they lost it, and it's a shame, specifically with this movie here. So the next one was Watch If You Can podcast. They went, I enjoyed it. Taylor Kitsch probably didn't have the leading man status to attract a bigger audience. I agree. Again, I don't want to blame Taylor completely, but again, I agree. I don't think he should have been the leading man in this movie, and I don't feel like he had the audience from the other things that he'd done to bring in people. Because at the end of the day, I know they say don't judge a book by its cover, but everybody does, right? It's a saying that we all say, but everybody does it anyway. And it's true. If you look at a poster and if you saw Taylor Kitsch on it, and then you saw Tom Hanks for a different poster, you are more likely to probably go for the movie with Tom Hanks than the movie with Taylor Kitsch. Reason being is that you've most likely seen a movie with Tom Hanks, and Tom Hanks has got a absolutely brilliant track record of all the movies that he's done. There is a higher likelihood that you'll enjoy that movie more than you'll enjoy a Taylor Kitsch movie, because you know who Tom Hanks is, and you know that you're probably going to be guaranteed a good time. And again, no offense to Taylor Kitsch, it's not his fault. It's just the fact of, at the time, I don't feel like he was leading man material. I still don't think he is. But because he was the rising star at the time, that's just what happens. And like Pedro Pascal, I love Pedro Pascal, but the reason you're seeing Pedro in everything is because he's the new leading star. And also the fact of, again, I don't mean to be horrible to Taylor, and if you ever get around to listen to this, Taylor, again, please don't take offense to any of this. I do think you're a brilliant actor. I really, really do. But Pedro Pascal, the reason he's in everything, he's not just because he is the sort of the new leading man, the new rising star, but he's really, really good in everything he's in. He's really talented. 9 times out of 10, everything that he's been in has been a smash hit, has won a lot of awards, had a lot of money. He's bankable. So people want him in their franchises, in their movies, because people are going to come to see Pedro Pascal, and he's a brilliant actor, so he will win them awards. You know what I mean? Whereas Taylor Kitsch, even though he's brilliant as well, he's not going to bring the people in. He's not going to make you a lot of money and win you a lot of awards. Now, again, I haven't seen him in anything recently, so that might have changed. But back then, it was a different story. So yeah, I completely agree. I just want a huge. I feel bad because I feel like I'm really dogging on Taylor Kitsch. I don't want to, because I do think he's a good actor. I just feel like he's not leading man material, and there's no positive way to say that about coming off sounding negative, because I'm not a negative person. Then you had Horrifying History. They go, I really liked it. I think the reason it flopped was due to poor advertising. Yeah, I completely agree. Poor advertisement. Really, really bad advertisement. And that's it, really. That's it for that. There was one more that on Discord by Dissect That Film podcast. I basically put on there, like, again, has anybody seen it? And they wrote, I've never seen it, or did I, and forgot everything about it. I can't remember. To be honest, yeah, you're not alone. You're not alone on there. A lot of people either haven't seen it or don't remember seeing it. Yeah. But that is all she wrote. As for some trivia, Trivia. So, while filming at Big Water in Utah, the film crew accidentally discovered a 60-foot-long sauropod dinosaur skeleton. The state's Land Management Bureau took over. That's cool. The rights to the novels have since reverted back to the Edgar Rice Burroughs estate. Oh, this is brilliant. Which is still game to try to turn the books into a successful movie franchise. So you know what this means, guys? Disney no longer has it. Forget what I said earlier. Forget all that. This means that Disney no longer has the rights. It's gone back to the Rice Burroughs estate, which means it's up for auction. Anybody could take it. So if you're listening to this, Paramount, Disney, Netflix, Amazon, HBO, any one of the big ones, if you listen to this, jump on John Carter. And this is the thing, this is another call out to my listeners. Let these studios know that you want John Carter. If you make a big enough shout, it will eventually be heard by somebody up above. And eventually they'll go, let's have a look at this shot. Oh, it's up for sale. We could probably get in there while it's cheap because nobody else is bidding and snap it up. Just saying. I'm just saying. Then we have, so the film probably holds the record for the longest time in development hell, 79 years. Pre-production first started in 1931, and then didn't get done. Then left development hell in January 2010 when filming officially started in London. Wow, 79 years in pre-production, development hell. God, well, we can't talk about Half-Life 3 anymore because that's been in development hell. It's been beaten by this movie. For each of the super jumps that Taylor Kitsch performed, he was attached to a harness that allowed him to free fall at a speed of 80 miles an hour. Kitsch apparently found it unpleasant. Yeah, I don't blame him. How many times he jumps in this movie, I don't blame him. Also, bit of a side sort of trivia for you. There was a cameo in this movie that you wouldn't know, but David Schwimmer was in this movie as a voice of a Tark. Again, I knew this going in. I tried to place his voice somewhere. I could not find it. Could not find his voice anywhere. I am sure
if somebody who's got a better ear than me could probably find him. But David Schwimmer's in this movie as a voice of a talk. I couldn't find it, but apparently he is in the movie. So there's that. I've just realized how long this episode's going on for. I was planning on talking about sort of the box office and stuff like that, but I don't know if I can. So I won't go into full detail, but I'll talk about sort of just a little bit. So although the film grossed nearly 300 million worldwide, it lost a considerable amount of money due to its cost. At the time of its release, Disney claimed the film's production budget was 250 million, although tax returns released in 2014 revealed its exact budget was $263.7 million, taking tax credits into account. So yeah, even though the movie made sort of nearly 300 million at the box office, it didn't make enough to break even. So it's still kind of classed as a failure, which is a shame. The aftermath is a bit different. So the film's failure led to the resignation of Rich Ross, the head of Walt Disney Studios. Although Ross had arrived there from his early success at the Disney Channel with John Carter already in development, Ross theoretically could have stopped production on John Carter as he did with a planned remake of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, or minimize the budget as he did to The Lone Ranger starring Johnny Depp. Instead, Stanton was given the production budget requested for John Carter, backed with an estimated $100 million of a marketing campaign that is typical for a tentpole movie, but without significant merchandising or any sort of ancillary tie-ins. It was reported that Ross later sought to blame Pixar for John Carter, which prompted key Pixar executives to turn against Ross, who already had alienated many, who he had already alienated many within the studio. So yeah, there was a big fallout. It was after this movie, like a lot of people just fell out with each other, and it's just a shame that this movie, as great as it is, led to such a fallout and had such a bad response. Because it's so good. When you watch this movie, you sit there and you do feel like Woody. You're like, yeah, hey, that's ready for the next episode. Where's the sequel? And then you realize there isn't one. And then you look into it and you realize the reason why there isn't one, because the movie didn't make its money back. It needed to make $700 million just to justify a sequel. So almost $1 billion it had to make just to kind of get a sequel. The marketing was terrible. Disney had no faith in it. Had no care. The Disney LucasArts or Lucasfilm merger was coming in, so they was taking over that. They got all the rights to Disney, to Star Wars, and all that sort of entails. And that was it, really. We had it in our palm, but Disney sort of burnt our hands and whacked it away and said, you're not getting what you want, and that was it, really. But I am glad to hear that the license has gone back to the Burroughs estate, because that means that somebody can come along, take this franchise and do it properly, do it justice, and give us the sequels. I don't care if it's a movie or a series, just as long as it's done properly. And Denis Villeneuve, not that he'd probably want to do another one of these after doing Dune, but he would be somebody I'd ask to come on to direct it, because I feel like he's got a good vision. I'd actually even bring in the same director as this one, Stanton. I'd even get him to come back and get him to, he might not want to do it again, but I'd ask him to come back, or Jon Favreau, or somebody who's good with science fiction, sci-fi, to bring them back and be like, look, this is the world, make something. I just want to see that. So yeah, this review's already ran over like an hour and 23 minutes, so I'm going to close up now. But thank you very, very much for listening to me rant and rave about how much I love this movie. Give it a go. That's all I'm going to end with, is just give this movie a go. If you've got Disney Plus, go find it. Go onto eBay, Amazon. You can find the movie on cheap online. It's not really, really expensive. Just find it any way you can. Give it a watch, give it a listen, and just enjoy. And then hopefully from there, you can see what I see. And if you don't, that's fair enough. But I just want more people to watch this movie because it's just generally so good. So, yeah, I've been your host, Luke the Elder Bean. You've been listening to the Howdy Beans podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor talking about John Carter today. I wish it was called John Carter of Mars, but that's neither here nor there. And until the next one, I will see you later, friends. Bye-bye.